Hey guys, I'm Michael. I'm Healthy Paws Herbal Labs. I'm your host today. Today we're talking with Casey, and I believe Kirsten's going to be joining us as well. And we're talking about Hollywood animals today, just a different topic than what we usually talk about. This is kind of like, I've heard a lot of people with their dogs are like, well, my dog's really trained really, really well. Can I get him in, into Hollywood? And it's a trick to do that, and there's actually special training that you have to do that. And so that's kind of like we were going to break that down today and just visit with Casey and Kirsten, if she joins us, about what it takes to be a Hollywood animal and be in the lights and cameras and all that, an on stage actor for animals. Casey's he calls himself a Texana in Australia. He trains animal and people. He loves playing the guitar. He's worked with many different breeds of animals. Although you see the tiger in his profile to, donkeys to now dogs. He lives in Australia, like I said, and, we're just going to be breaking it down. So I would love for Casey to say hello to the room and just kind of give a little bit about your background and where you started and how you got to become working with Hollywood animals.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, Michael. I'm Casey. I've been training animals 35 years. I started out actually as a circus animal trainer. I grew up as a kid on a circus, and that was where I got my experience training big cats and elephants. And then as I got older, I kind of got out of that business and more into the, over the years, I did some film stuff with circus animals, and then moved to South Africa, did a bunch of Bollywood films with some exotic animals, and then just kind of, I was brought here to Australia to work for a company that provides film animals for a lot of different movies. And during the pandemic, that kind of slowed way down. So I started a dog training business.
Beautiful. Kirsten, how are you today? Good to see you. Welcome.
Hey, you guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Loud and
Yay.
So Kirsten's it's really cute. There's a really cute story with Kirsten and I, is that I was in a room here on Clubhouse, and there's Kim Greco, who's a trainer here, and she was in the room, and we were talking behind the scenes on texting and all that about, because she invited me into the room. She goes, "Oh, you should come into this room and listen to this room." And I joined the room, and in there was Travis, and then there was Kirsten, and I all of a sudden Kim says, "Oh yeah, she has this elephant that Travis worked with on one of the shows for Animal Planets." And I was like, "Elephant?" And then all of a sudden, I heard the name Susie, and I'm like, "Wait a second, Susie." And I actually had worked with Susie. I'd hired Susie here in Los Angeles for an event that I did probably, maybe 15 years ago, I think, something like that. And I got to work with Susie, and it was Kirsten's elephant. And so we just had this instant bond and just a creative, wonderful story together. And it's just, and I was able to actually pick out a picture and find it and send it to her. And it was like, it's just kind of like Clubhouse is kind of like a big world and even a small world at the same time. So with that, I would love for Kirsten to introduce herself and say hi.
Hey, you guys. So as my bio says, and as Michael said, I am a trainer in Los Angeles, and I work with all kinds of wild animals, similar to Casey, among which a very special elephant that Michael happened to know from the way back. And she happened to be an elephant that we rescued from believe it or not, a roadside petting zoo in South Carolina years ago. Anyway, but now I still train animals for the industry like Casey. I train dogs, big cats, bears still. I work with everything. I used to work mainly with exotics. Then it was like an even spread exotics, domestics, and now it's mainly domestics, partly exotics. This is an ever evolving industry. It's been evolving since I was young. I evolve along with it, and here I am.
Yeah, so I'm excited. So Kirsten, have you had a chance to really meet Casey yet?
Not in person, but so Casey knows my Uncle Brian, who I was with on the East Coast over the weekend. And because my family, we're like a family of animal trainers. And so I was having dinner with him, and I mentioned Casey because I got thinking you DM'd me or something, and it got me to thinking about everything. And I was like, oh, Uncle Brian, there's this guy I'm going to do a room with named Casey that knows you from working on something. And he remembered you, Casey. He remembered you clearly.
Yeah, when I was first starting out with my Tiger Act, I guess is Dave is your uncle then?
My dad, Brian, is my uncle.
Right. So the Flying Tigers was the greatest Tiger Act I ever saw on video in my life. So he was like my hero.
That's my dad.
See, I love that. And that's like, that's Clubhouse. It's like such a small, small world. It's like we're all connected, and it's like I love what we discover here on Clubhouse and everything we learn about. So, Kirsten, before you come in, we were talking about, people thinking like with their dogs, can my dog be an animal actor? How do I get there? So I would love to hear like what your thoughts are, because like it does take a different type of training, because there's got to be, I'm sure, like a distance training and maybe just sign training and all that. And so I'd really want to just break that down between the two of you today. And, and even with the different animals that you guys work with. So, Kirsten, where do you start with, your animals? Like when you get a dog or, or you're looking at a different animal for Hollywood, how do you determine whether they're right for Hollywood?
The main thing is, do they like working? And so a lot of dogs don't like working. And so if they don't like working, this is not just dogs. If this is any animal that you're considering, for this particular world, they have to enjoy the engagement of training, enjoy the attention that they get, from that engagement from their trainer. And then, it helps a lot if the dog, has a confident disposition. Because sometimes if they don't, that can become a hindrance depending on the nature of the job. And then beyond that, so the kind of dog, and I'd love to hear Casey's opinion on this, the kind of dog that to me makes the best animal actor is usually the dog that's like a nightmare for a pet. You know what I mean? Where you're like, this dog, jumps on the kitchen counter, he scratches the door, he barks the whole time I'm gone, he's digging holes in the backyard. That is like, that's gold. Okay. That is like, bring me the dog. Cause that dog, he just wants the job. That's why he's doing all of that. The dog is going to want to like train and work and deliver all day long. It's what's going to make that little creature happy. So, dogs like that are like, for me, like, it's a gold rush. It doesn't mean that every dog that I work with is like that though. Then from that point, it is on a training level, it is so very important. And this is to answer your question, like what's the difference? So the difference with pet dog training and studio animal training is the animals that we work with, they have to have developed a work ethic. And it's same thing as a work ethic in a person. And so I work with trainers all the time where their dogs, they can do stuff, but the dog itself has no work ethic. And these are people that like want to get their dog. Like, I want my dog to work. Look at this great dog. And it can do 72 different tricks I've never heard of, tricks I've never trained, tricks I don't know if I could train, but the dog has no work ethic. It wants to do them on their terms, gets bored, pulls away the attention span. And that can be worked up and stretched out. It takes time and finesse. And so that would be my answer, Michael.
Casey, what's your answer?
Well, pretty similar to what Kirsten is saying. I look for, especially with dogs, I want a dog that's very, very bold and brazen and not afraid, because as much as that, like what she was saying, you can have a dog that does 75 tricks on a cue, but it'll do those tricks usually in your living room in a very controlled environment where it feels like doing that for attention, or where when you're actually on a set, it looks nothing like that. There's like you spend a ton of time desensitizing the dogs to very unnatural things to the dog, like boom microphones, lights that are rolling around, cameras on tracks. And so I want a dog that's just not afraid of anything more important than, like, you can teach any dog to do a behavior, but it's sometimes hard to teach them that, that's not going to eat you as they're zooming by with a camera on a track. So, I look for the temperament, like the bravery of the dog before anything. Like, I want a dog that's just not scared of anything.
So almost, I've got ADD, so almost like an ADD dog, almost that's bouncing around almost. I love that. And I love the fact that you said, you brought up like the working dog, Kirsten, is like, for me, it's like, I had never even thought about that with animals. It's like, they really have to want to work, and that's with every animal as well. Sue did raise her hand, and so I did want to invite her to see if she had a question and she wanted to join us. Sue, hi, welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm in the same field as Casey and Kirsten. So I've been doing this for nearly 3 decades. And that last comment, I just totally agree that when I go to a shelter or rescue or look for an adult dog anywhere, it's the most obnoxious, knocking over trash cans, completely fearless. And we can channel all that energy into training them for a studio dog and being able to go work on set. So I totally agree on that point.
Well,
that's Casey, yes.
Well, I was just going to say, it's the three of us, if you were to, I'm very much in the pet training business now. So I spend most of my days nowadays teaching dogs to act exactly the opposite of how my dogs act at home, because I want them to have that just curiosity and just be, oh yeah, I could do that. I could get up on top of the house and get a hold of that, where I would never encourage that with somebody's pet dog. It's not a trait that you would necessarily want. I think the perfect pet dog is a little less rambunctious and curious and less drive. You don't want your poodle your pet poodle constantly trying to figure out how to open cabinet doors, where every time my dogs do that and help themselves to something, I just have a laugh and go, well, someday that's going to be really useful.
Right. They'll be your caretakers.
And just to give proper recognition, you guys, because I know Sue, and she is now living in Hawaii, still doing the same thing. But Sue is a very well-known trainer in my industry. She's British, like my family is, and immigrated here, trained animals in LA for a really long time, doing, TV with a really great company that I still work with to this day on sets. And then she moved to Hawaii, and now she does Hawaii Five-0, that TV series. She does the dogs there, among other things. That's just the one that's, probably well-known right now. And she's really incredible and just, really good trainer, just awesome, very knowledgeable person.
Well, I love
that. And a nice person.
Yeah. Thanks, Kirsten.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Kirsten.
And then also just want to give a shout out. My friend Sarah's in the office. In the office.
Hey, Sarah.
In the audience. Sarah Carson, and she's a performing dog trainer. She performs with her dogs, and she did a TV show that I worked on for Nickelodeon as animal coordinator and a producer in September, and we brought her on to perform with her incredible dogs. She's for sure one of the most talented dog trainers I know. Just she's naturally gifted and has a kick-ass work ethic. Speaking of work ethic.
Well, I love that. And that's what's so beautiful about these rooms, is that we just get to discover each other and just learn all about this. And, Sue, how long, I'm looking at your profile right now, and you've been on since February. Wow. I'm surprised we haven't I haven't seen you, or maybe I haven't recognized you yet, so I'm happy that you jumped up and you raised your hand as well, because, this fascinates me, this Hollywood animals. And, I hear so many times, even like with influencers, I have a room that we do influencing, and we talk about pet influencers, and a lot of those influencers, they're like, oh, I want to jump over to have my dog be an animal actor. And I'm, and I listen to them, and I'm just like going, wow, I think there's a lot more than, to it than just, wanting to have it. And, I love that we're breaking it down here. So, let's go down the line here. And Sue, I'm going to include you in the conversation if you'd like to hang out with us. Casey, how long, when you started, you said you grew up in the circus. That's pretty amazing for me. It's like, I'm sure it was here in the United States, right?
Yeah, I spent up until about 12 years ago. I spent all of my time on a circus. I owned a tiger act. I owned a couple of elephants at one point. And so the film work that I did over that period was just the occasional thing where somebody got a hold of us and wanted either specifically an elephant or a tiger, and we just happened to be more conveniently located than any place else. That wasn't the mainstay of my business at that point. I got more into film stuff when I got to South Africa because they make a lot of Bollywood movies there.
Oh, beautiful. So that's kind of like your transition was from circus to the Bollywood industry almost, you know? And so Kirsten, I know that you mentioned that your dad's been in the business for a long time, your uncle, we've talked about this before. How long has your family been inside this industry?
So they both retired in the last 10 years. So in England, my great-grandfather trained racehorses, and then my dad and uncle ran away and joined the circus. I was a clown in the Ringling Show. We left by the time I was 8, and that was my dad was a tiger trainer. We moved out to America permanently, like full-time on the West Coast. And my uncle, and this is in the 80s, and this is like where there were like these theme parks in the U.S. that had wild animals at them. Most of them are gone now, but there was different ones. And so they worked and trained there until they were just doing mainly film work full time. And so I grew up on wild animal ranches. I never had a dog outside of the dogs that we had to race the tigers and the lions with. But those weren't like, I never trained a dog. I never had a pet dog or anything like that. And then my uncle started his own company on the West Coast, and then my dad on the East Coast. And so then I grew up going back and forth between those two places. And actually then my mom moved to Kauai, so I spent a lot of time there. Not a lot of film work there, but there was some. And then settled permanently when I was about 21. And ran my uncle's business for him and trained in that business up until they sold the business, I don't know, like in the last 7 years or so, and then started my own. My brother and I had kind of already started to branch off because we knew that we were going to be selling the main business and doing the dog thing, as we say. And yeah, so now I do it for myself. I work with all the companies still. I mean, it's just one of the things, unlike private dog training, you're usually flying solo a lot. If you're working on set, you're very, very commonly working with other trainers, and it's how you learn. I'm always so impressed if somebody, is learning this online or I guess through a book. I don't know that I could, I love digesting things like that, but I'm a very hands-on person, and that's how I learned. And that's why I don't ever think I know everything, because I have worked with trainers that are so incredible. Like my uncle, he's so good with so many species that I just feel grateful to do what I do versus that I know a whole lot.
Well, it's cute because so you grew up in the circus too. So I love that, that connection. How about you, Sue? Where did you start?
I did not start in the circus. What was that, Casey?
Boo!
I grew up in England, so I actually walked into a Royal Air Force recruiting office when I was 17 to see if I could join and become a dog trainer, a dog handler. And back then, which was quite a long time ago, I'm sure they wouldn't do this today, they said that they don't have women dog handlers, just kennel maids. Can you imagine? So I kind of looked at them and was like, well, I don't mind cleaning, dog runs and stuff, but I'm not just going to be like cleaning while the male dog trainers go out and do their thing. So I walked out, which was probably a good thing. From there, I went to the States when I was 18, and I worked at a marine life park. So I got my start in animal training with dolphins and sea lions and otters and seals and that kind of thing. And then from there, I discovered this whole industry of studio training through some of the people I worked with. There's a school in California, even more at Moore Park College, it's exotic animal training. I can't remember what the last word is. And a lot of the people that worked at the marine park that I was at that time had gone through that school, and their friends had gone on to do studio work. And which is odd to me that I've never put the two together, because I actually grew up in England with my family working for the BBC and going to set and watching them as a kid work. So I'd definitely been on set when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old and watched animals work, but I'd never really put the two together and thought that's what I wanted to do. So I drove from Florida, packed all my stuff up, headed out to LA. I did the rounds to all the different animal companies. LA is definitely the place to go to start in this industry. And, you know, most of the companies, once you start talking to them, and definitely now that I've worked for them, they usually only hire interns, like 1 or 2 people a year. So you just have to kind of be in the right place at the right time to get started. And I actually didn't find an opening right away. A couple of years went by, and then I went back and tried again, and I got in with a company called Studio Animal Services. And we, like Kristen said, we all work together. That's for sure. Like, all the animal trainers work together. All the animal companies work together. So, you know, the company I worked for, we mainly had domestic animals, dogs, cats. We also had a few other little things like squirrels and ducks. I did the Aflac commercials for 13 years, training a Peking duck for those commercials. And so, you know, if we needed a lion or a bear or a giraffe or whatever, then we would go to the companies like Kirsten's. Was it your dad, or is your dad or your uncle?
On the West Coast, my uncle.
Okay. So we would go there and we would, you know, subcontract and have the trainers bring an elephant or a tiger or a lion or whatever to set. And so we would all work together. And, yeah, I worked there for 21 years. And I decided, after doing a movie here in 2013 in Hawaii, that I wanted to get out of LA. I wanted to just go someplace else. I was so fed up with Los Angeles. So the local production people here, when I was leaving, they suggested I move and start my own company, because there was nobody here that did my job. They would either have to try and get somebody from LA, which is super difficult because there's quarantine laws here, or try and hire a local that they don't really know, you know, what they're doing on set. So yeah, in 2014, I moved here. Jurassic World was my first movie that I worked on with pigs. And from then on, I went to work on Hawaii Five-0. I now have the 2 Dobermans that are on Magnum PI that I own and train. And whatever movies come to town, I fly in horses from the animal companies in LA that have studio trained horses, Liberty trained horses. So I've done a lot of movies here that we've required Liberty horses, and we put them on a cargo plane and fly them over with their trainers. And yeah, I'm actually just right now casting for a TV show here, looking for a dog, and it's pretty cool.
I love it. You know, it's just like so wonderful because, like, you know, I live in Los Angeles. I grew up here. And of course, my mom worked on Love Boat for 11 years for the whole seasons, all the seasons. And so she got me inside the movie industry when I was young. So I'm very aware of the sets, and I've seen animals on the sets. And so it's really kind of I love this, you know, that I love the fact that you guys are like so linked together. You know, it just shows you what a small world. I mean, even Kirsten and I with Susie, it was like so great to discover that we knew each other, but we didn't know each other. So when you guys are working inside of a set, you know, and, you know, you have a dog, let's say we're working with a dog, and you're working on a set, and the distractions, how do you get, I mean, I'm sure there's so much training that goes into desensitizing them from all the distractions. Where do you start, Kirsten? Sorry.
So when I'm training at the beginning with dogs, the most important thing I focus on is their temperament. I get a good read on their temperament. And then I just work on getting that into the best shape possible. So temperament versus training, I'll take temperament over training any day. because a dog with a really solid temperament is going to deliver. You can pull things out of a hat versus a dog with a really, I wouldn't say a crap temperament because it's only crap, in the context of what I do. So I would just say, I take the temperament over training. So I work heavily on temperament. Then from there, I build up focus. So once we're sort of acclimating them and desensitizing them, it all starts with positive. You're working on the training first. Once you have a good hold of their focus with the training, then you start to work in all kinds of distractions. By the way, it's not just like lights, camera, actions distractions. A distraction could be talent petting the dog. That's a really common thing, that a dog has to do a behavior and then talent comes in and pets the dog. If you were doing that with a private, like a pet dog, somebody's actual pet, it'll distract them from what they're doing, and they kind of it'll break the action, so to speak. So the distractions are all kinds of silly, funny things. You get them used to working with food. You get them used to working with people that are talking to them, saying things to them, but you don't want the dog to listen to them. You want the dog to listen to you. So it's really an across the board kind of a thing.
Well, it takes so much, tenacity and patience, I think, with a dog. Casey, you flashed your mic, saying you were agreeing with her. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I hadn't, somehow I blanked that out, but that is 100% the biggest distraction is talent talking to and trying to engage with the dog that you're trying to get to not to engage with them. It's a really hard thing to teach, especially with dogs. It's harder with dogs because they're so social and they want attention from people. It's not as hard. Like, you can tell the talent, don't pet that tiger. And one, they'll most likely listen to you because they think, oh, maybe that's a safety concern. But then two, even if they do pet the tiger isn't looking to engage with them in that way. Where a dog, for example, when you see a dog walking alongside somebody in a film or a TV show, they're not actually telling the dog to heel. The trainer is off camera telling the dog to go with them, and the dog will generally do that perfect until the 15th time that you shoot it, and the guy at the end decides to reach down and say, "Oh, good dog," and give it a pat, and then that'll throw everything out of whack. Is my experience of that.
So then it's another 15
That's a hard one.
right? Yeah, I would think it is, right? And
it's hard to expect them not to want it. I mean, they've been walking alongside the dog for 15 different attempts, and so they're getting frustrated, and they just assume the dog must be getting frustrated. So even though that guy told me, don't talk to the dog, don't pet the dog, don't look at the dog, I'm going to go ahead and pet this dog and tell it that I like it and it's a good dog, which is a totally reasonable thing to have happen, but that will mess everything up. That will make the next 15 tries even harder.
Wow. So you almost have to go in and train the actors before you bring in your dogs.
That's 90% of it, Sue, and that's why I've never been an animal coordinator, because there are people that's their job, is to do the briefing with the talent and all the safety things, and that's not my cup of tea. That would be Kirsten and Sue, I'm sure, do a lot of that.
Well, you did say safety. I just want to reset the room for everybody that just joined us. We are talking with Casey, Kirsten, and even Sue joined us here. They're all in the animal acting world with their animals, as well as Casey and Kirsten is with dog training. Sue, do you do dog training? You do, because you have your 2 Dobermans.
Yeah. I only do dogs. Most of the stuff I do here is dog training, and while I was in LA, the biggest difference here in Hawaii is there is no exotic animals allowed here. So we are pretty limited when we're making a movie. Sometimes movie companies come here. They're a little bit more knowledgeable these days, but back in the day, they'd want to try and bring in stuff, and it's not impossible. It just takes forever to get permits, and it's usually too long for them to work it out. But yeah, I mainly train dogs, cats.
Going back to Casey really quick, you both have talked about tigers. I did an event here in Los Angeles with Tippi Hedren, and she has a rescue facility outside of Los Angeles here for big cats, and she was telling me all about these and how lovable they are. And it's like, Casey, you're saying, it's like, I feel like, if I'm on a set and I'm working with a tiger, I'd almost, because I even had a white tiger. Maybe it was yours. Did you have a white tiger, Kirsten?
Yeah, we had one white tiger at the ranch, and then on the East Coast, my dad had two. So if it was out here, it could have been ours. I don't know if you remember her name.
If you say it, maybe I'd remember it.
Bagheera?
Maybe.
Bagheera.
No, I don't know. Because I think I kept using Hayden. So I think I kept going through Hayden when I was getting the animals.
Yeah. So if that was, how long ago was that, Michael?
That was probably maybe 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Then I don't know whose white that was, because ours wasn't alive then for sure.
But how is it?
And then Michael, oh, go ahead.
How is it to work with a lion or tiger on a set when you're working with, to me, they seem like they're dangerous animals.
Well, Casey will weigh on this too. It's very different having a circus, like doing your animals in the circus and circus ring. As strange as it sounds, it's a lot safer because you're usually working in a ring. Going on a set with a wild animal, it's different. I grew up doing that. And so it's, that when I switched to dogs, I found it so much less stressful because I knew for sure that there was not a risk of somebody dying because of me that day. So that was like I was like, no wonder I've had insomnia since I was 11. You know what I mean? But then also the thing is, so when you're working on a set with a wild animal, and, Casey had his fair share of experiences with this too, people do what you say you need. This is how it has to be. This is how it's going to be when we pull up. We're bringing the animal out at this time. This is the best order to shoot things in. And they just go, okay. No problem. And because I do animal coordination too, I'm like in charge of a lot of communication and safety stuff in addition to handling the animal physically when on the set. But when you have a dog on a set, right? And I'm sure Sue's, had her fair share of experiences with this. You go on set and then you go, okay, like this is the best order for us to do this action in, and this is how we're going to get the best performance. And they go, okay. And then they do whatever they want to do. They might listen to some of what you say, but they're not like, it's not the law, and with wild animals, it is the law. It is stressful though, Michael. Like last week I had a bear on a set, and he got scared by and this is a very confident bear and a very, very seasoned bear. He's a Kodiak though, big guy, about 1,000 pounds. And I've worked with him in the last few years quite a bit. Really good boy, just a good boy. My friend Keith is his head trainer. I have worked with Keith for 20 years. He's just he is like a big dopey bear. He's so great and he's so relaxing to work with. But still, at one point that he got scared, and after he got scared, we're like, okay, we're going to give him like a 5-minute break. He didn't want to load up in his trailer. He just didn't want to because something scared him and he needed a minute to think. And I automatically was like, okay, I can clear everybody out of this stage in about 18 seconds if I need to, in a very calm way, just in case things get hectic, and it's one of those things that never happens with a dog, that literally never happens. Because truth of the matter is, if a 1,000-pound bear doesn't want to load up in his trailer, he's not going to. We're going to sit there and we're going to wait until he feels like it. And that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I would think. And Casey, what's been your experience? Like, of course, I'm asking this question is like, have you ever had one of those like close calls or a call that was not the best results?
I haven't with a lion or a tiger because I got into that as I got older, and I'm so OCD about safety that I haven't. I did have an elephant nearly bad situation for a pilot TV show that Matt Groening was making in the 90s about Neanderthal men and Homo erectus or Homo sapien. It was like a Romeo and Juliet TV show that never really got off the ground. And so there's, 60 guys dressed up like Neanderthal men running around in this field in Colorado, and our two elephants are standing next to a creek, and we had the safety meeting, and everybody, because most of these guys are extras, and everybody was told, don't run towards the elephants, don't approach the elephants, because I had an elephant that wasn't a real friendly elephant, and everybody knew that, but I was young and stupid, and I said, yeah, I can be 30 meters away, laying in this creek, and keep the elephants under control. And one of these Neanderthal man costume guys went charging towards the elephant, and with his arms up, making this squeaky sound, and that was nearly a bad situation. Nobody got hurt, but it very easily could have turned into somebody getting hurt. So I was lucky enough to have that happen when I was young, and say, okay, well, we're going to change the way we do this a little bit.
Wow, that's it's crazy for me. Carrie raised her hand. I think she has a question. Hey, Carrie, welcome.
Yeah. Hey. I was in a room with Casey the other day, and I forget which room it was, what the topic was, but I was surprised. Well, I guess, and I shouldn't have been. He mentioned something about we were talking about masks, I think, and he mentioned that if he wore like a different color tuxedo, one of his tigers didn't like that outfit as much. And this is for the whole panel. What do you feel? I mean, we've heard that the actors can cause distraction, the trolleys, the outfits. Like, what is the worst thing in your opinion of getting the shot in the can, so to speak, when you're dealing with so many of these different complex relationships between the animal and the environment?
The mask was the tuxedo was a lion, and he just had an aversion to a white tuxedo that I wore, and I wore it pretty regularly. And every time I did, when I would take my head out of his mouth, he would try to bite into my chest to get a hold of that. He just really didn't like that tuxedo.
Yeah, because we were talking about, in fact, the conversation started we were talking about mask. It was, I think it was either Paw Stretch this weekend or something like that. But yeah, and so did you wear the white tux around him after that?
I wore it all the time, thinking that he would just get over it, but he never did. It was, I have no idea why. I had other white costumes. I had other tuxedos with tails.
That's so funny.
But,
that's amazing, Casey. That's amazing.
Well, and I'm the kind of person that I don't generally like, and I've changed my thoughts on this. So years ago, people would rehearse their animals with their music repeatedly, and if they were going to change their music, it was going to be a big deal. And because I worked predominantly tigers, not lions, I scoffed at that and said, that's ridiculous. They don't even hear it. That has nothing to do with anything. And then I took over an act of lions, and it turns out that really is a thing, like changing. Lions are much more, sound sensitive than tigers are. So lions, if you play a different song when they're supposed to go in and work, they'll sometimes freak out about it.
Well, don't they get kind of like where they do their own choreography in their head with the music? Wouldn't that be kind of like, I would think they get so used to that beat or that sound at that moment?
It does kind of happen, but it's something you kind of try to avoid, because then they're not actually working. You do want, like, and this is not film related, this is totally circus related, which isn't for the room so much, but they get into a routine, and that can actually be a problem, because once they get into a routine, it actually happens with film animals too. Like if you keep shooting the same shot over and over again, then you're dealing with anticipation, and the animal will try to skip some steps because they're getting frustrated or anxious, and they say, no, I know where we're going with this. I'll just go straight from point A to point F and skip all these steps in between. So you're kind of trying to avoid routine, and you're trying to you want it to look like a polished routine, but you want them to actually be working for you, not for the music or for whatever the environment has created.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like what Kirsten was saying about working. Sue?
Yeah, so I've coordinated a couple of movies and stuff where I've had exotics and stuff on the show. And you guys Casey and Kirsten can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember one time we had a lion that had to do an attack on its trainer, and the trainer was doubling the actor. and they can become possessive over, from what I remember being told at the time, that they can become possessive over accessories. So it was like a soldier that had a bunch of straps and little bags and stuff on his body, and they had to sew everything so it didn't flap around, because they will become possessive over certain parts of the wardrobe. Is that true, you guys?
For sure, that can happen, and lions especially. There's nothing worse than a lion on a set getting a hold of something that it decides it's not going to let you have back. It's a long waiting game then. Kirsten will have some thoughts on that, I'm sure.
Oh yes, and some memories. But that's like what Casey was saying. This is all done in the preparation. So when we go, whenever, speaking of the job last week with the bear, I went to set a day ahead of time and did a tech scout to look over all of the set and make sure everything was going to work for us. And there were a couple of things that had to change in order for it to work for us. And so it's done in the preparation. And, because nobody wants their animals in that situation. It's bad for your whole relationship. You just don't want anything to do with it. It doesn't do anything good for you. Even getting over things like that. It's not like, oh, cool. I got over a hurdle with an animal. It's just nothing good comes from that. You might learn something as a trainer. Other than that, I would say nothing really beneficial comes from it, other than the fact that you learned.
A good recce is worth millions of dollars when it comes to shooting something with an exotic animal. If you can go in the day before and even something as simple as how you're going to get from the trailer you're unloading to the set.
That's very important.
That's where 90% of your problems are going to happen. And you get there and you go, okay, all these trash cans, they need to be somewhere else. All of this, it needs to be somewhere else, because you certainly could jump the line out, walk him right through there, and maybe nothing happens. But if something does happen and he grabs that, or he finds it aversive or scary, you're starting off on the wrong foot right from the beginning. You haven't even started shooting and you're already having a problem.
So then, are there certain things that you will, for each animal with their own personality, that they're triggered from? Like what Carrie's asking, is there certain things that stand out for any types of animals, or is it just really just per animal?
Yeah, it's pretty much per animal. There's certain things, like electrical cords. Kirsten's got a cockatoo on her hand in her picture, so I'm sure she's dealt with cords. Certain parrots find electrical cords very aversive because they think they're snakes, no matter how many electric cords they've seen in their life.
It's so true.
So you start to figure out that certain animals have a propensity to be fearful of things, but that's what all of us are doing, is spending enough time with these animals, hopefully, that, especially when it's exotics, that's the big, dogs. Everyone here on the stage at some point has, borrowed a dog from someone that wasn't necessarily a movie dog, and quick put something together for production of some sort of a TV show or a commercial, because you can kind of wing it for certain things. But when you're dealing with, lions and tigers and elephants and things like that, you want to have enough of a relationship with the animal that you already know all of his little ticks, that, oh no, we got to get that out of here because he doesn't like that. And I know what'll happen when he walks past that. It's a little bit different. Like with the dogs, it's just what Kirsten was saying. It's a lot more forgiving and you get a lot more sleep at night.
What about with humans? Do they have do certain animals have a preference of being around males or females? Does that ever occur?
I think that does happen, but that's part of the reason that you try to train the dogs to not be engaged with the talent, the people involved. You want the dog to just be neutral to everything. That's where starting out with a really competent dog that's not afraid of things and will just, I'll play this game, I'll do it. And then you deal with less of that if you're, it's kind of a hard balance, because you do want the dog to seem like it's engaged with the person sometimes, but you're really doing everything you can to teach your animals to not be engaged, if that makes sense.
Right. What about, okay, so I've been dying to ask Sue this question before we dig into a little deeper about this. Sue, you said that you were working on Jurassic with the pigs. Were the pigs to run in the field so that they could do the CNC with them with the animation?
Yeah. So it was where they were testing. Chris Pratt's character was testing the dinosaurs, that he had control over them when a prey animal would run through the arena, I think, if I remember correctly, or they would use the pigs to draw the dinosaurs into the arena back to him, where he would use his clicker to communicate with them, not in the way we use them. But yeah, that was, we used here in Hawaii, as is the case in a lot of, all over the world, there are wild feral pigs. So a lot of people have them here and hand raise them. And unfortunately, obviously, when they get too big, they don't want them anymore. So we train those, and we also we've trained domestic pigs. For that scene, it was domestic. So we had 7 of them, and we shot a lot of the stuff here. And then we shipped 3 of them to New Orleans and finished filming there.
Wow. So then with, working with all these animals during your lifetime and then going into dog training, did it prepare you? Do you feel like you had such a better edge becoming a dog trainer? I'll start with Kirsten.
Could you repeat that, Michael? It just cut out.
With working with animals in Hollywood and on the set, when you decided that you'd start training dogs, pet dogs, did you find that you already had an advantage to understanding the mindset and being able to work with the dogs easier? Or was it like you had to even retrain your way of training yourself?
Yeah, I had a hard time at the beginning with that. It was mainly because there was at one point in the late 90s where a lot of work went to Canada and it got a little slow. And so I started being able to train dogs for people in production, and I was really sucky at it, I'll be honest, because it's actually a very different kind of training than what I'm used to. And I also found the pet dog training community at that time, I don't know about now, not to be very friendly, which was surprising because I was used to working with trainers all the time. And so we were always, you help each other and you teach each other and you learn from each other and you collaborate. And anyway, so I found it to be very different. But then I read 30 books on dog training, and I'm not exaggerating. I literally read 30 books on dog training. And from that, it was almost like the Matrix. I felt like I got this download, and I was like, it all came together. I was like, oh, I already know how to do this stuff. And I just started doing things differently. But a lot of what I started doing at the beginning, it was from working with, the way I leash train a dog was similar to how with a dog that was leash resistant, it was very similar to how I leash train tiger cubs. Now, that's just weird, but that's all I had to draw from. So that's kind of how I did it. And I mean, everybody comes into this differently. You just heard our stories, and our stories are very different. And then there's people on the audience that came into it differently than that even. And so I think we all kind of come at the conversation differently. But I really have felt in all animal training that of course you need mentorship. Of course you need to learn from people. I still have 2 people that I turn to that I learn from, and I still learn from my uncle too. But you learn and you emulate until you have your own style. Once you have your own style, you discard what does not work for you anymore that the other people taught you, and you add what is uniquely yours. It'd be very hard for someone like me or Casey or Sue to write a book on how to train a dog and be like, this is exactly how you do it. Because at a certain point, you know too much and you go, oh my gosh, there's so many ways that I've had to get this done. And it didn't work on this dog and that dog and this dog and that dog, and so and it's just for example, how to train a speak on a dog. It doesn't always work. There's one of my own working dogs. I could not get this dog to bark. I tried everything in the book. I had to drive him. I was working on a shoot, and I brought him on the shoot because I knew we were going to be working in the middle of up in Northern California, and the cow pastures up there is beautiful. And I drive him on one of our down half days to one of the cow pastures and take him out and let him see a cow, because I knew as soon as he saw a cow was coming toward him, he would just do one woof, and I was going to click that bitch. I was going to click that woof and get that speak. You know what I mean? And I did. And that's how I started one of my working dogs, Speaks. And I had tried everything else. And I've been doing this for 26 years. And it wasn't working. You know what I mean? So it's, anyway, that's my answer.
So you had the clicker in hand. I love it. I love it.
Oh, I was ready. I was like, this cow's going to come up. And he was quiet. But then as soon as his body stiffened, my dog, I was like, here it comes. Here it comes. And he was hungry. I had him ready. I was ready for this.
Oh, so you starved him before even.
Well, he was 7 months old. He was a puppy. So all I had to do was have him skip breakfast for him to be like starving. You know, he was like a teenage boy.
I love it, the way we get these methods. Casey, what about you? I know that you grew up in the circus, you've had your tigers around you, and then you started dog training. Did you find that it was an easy transition for you, or was it like Kirsten, where you really had to like switch out and just look at the whole big picture a little differently?
Very, very, very different. Like it definitely, you know, the training the dog part for the, like, cause now most of what I do is I'm trying people's pet dogs to not be jerks. And the training the dog part is really easy for me. Like that I've never had any trouble with that, but the communicating with the people and being able to put information in a way that just your average pet owner could understand is super something that I've had to work. I mean, I've only been in business here for a little over a year, but it's something that I still allocate time for every day to rehearse in my mind. Like you can't talk to these people like they're, you know, like they're also an animal trainer. You can't talk to them like they're the guy that shovels elephant shit on the circus. You have to, you know, and you have to be able to read the person and see, are they digesting this? Is this making sense to them? Because people will tell you, yeah, that makes sense. And then you'll walk away and they'll be thinking, no, none of that made sense. So that part of the dog training has been the hardest transition. And I think, like Kirsten just touched on something that's super, that's a valuable asset that everybody that's done film training, it brings with them. And that's, she was ready, you know, and you get into the habit, because it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a simple, you know, 30-second commercial that'll have all this storyboard, and they tell you, yep, and you have the dog or the cat, you have it completely ready for that action. You know exactly what you're going to do. You've rehearsed it 10,000 times, and you show up, and that's not at all what they want to do. So you just get in the habit of, one, making things up on the fly, and just, okay, well, I see what you want here. That's not what you told me you wanted, but because they seldom actually do know what they want. But I think we could get this. And then it kind of did help with the pet training, because you from talking to people like that and saying, well, I see what you want here. We maybe can't get exactly that, but we could get this, you know, and you start making it feel like it was their idea, which is a lot easier to sell. So definitely the film animals, that industry carries over well. A lot of the information and knowledge that you get working in that carries over to the pet dogs for sure.
Well, you know, what I see and what I hear a lot is, like, a lot of the time you're not necessarily just training the dogs, you're training the people as well, the parents. And that's one of the biggest, you know, key factors of making the successful win for the dog, is having the parent be trained in just being able to follow up all the time and reinforce the good behaviors.
Yeah, that's 80%, if not more, of the pet dog business. The pet training business is the training the dog is literally the easiest part of the whole equation. It's setting it up so that it's going to have success after you've trained it, and that's going to carry on for a long period of time, so that it doesn't devolve back to what it was, or they start having conflict with the dog. It's very different. Like the circus industry, the film industry, it's very much results based. Like, somebody hires you, they want a dog or a lion or a tiger to do X, Y, and Z. And the only way you get paid is if X, Y, and Z occurs, you know. So it's a very different format, because you can have great results with a pet dog where the dog, you know, does a perfect heel. it'll hold a downstay for 5 minutes out in the pasture. But if the owner can't do that a week later, it's a failure.
Right, right. Do you, when you are on set, you were talking about, Casey, it's like, you've rehearsed, you've practiced, and you've got to be ready, because they do change their mind all the time. And I know that being on set as well, is like, even with actors, they'll think they're going for one direction, and in a second they'll split to a whole different thing. And they'll even change lines on you in the middle of the day, and you've memorized all your lines. So, because your animals are working animals or working dogs, is it easy for them to adapt to these situations?
If they're a good one.
Kirsten?
Could you ask the question again, Michael? Sorry, it's loud here.
I was just saying, just the fact that, Casey was talking about that a lot of times when you get on set and all of a sudden you've already pre-rehearsed with the animal, the moves and what you believe that they want, and you get there and all of a sudden the director says, no, this is not what I want. I want something completely different. Do you find that your animals are easy to adopt to it? Or do you have to say, give me 20 minutes and let me work on it outside and come back in?
See, that happens like almost every time.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's really common. You're like, you've got the storyboard. Sometimes you even get the shot list ahead of time, the shooting schedule. You're like, we're doing it. And then you get there and they're like, so what we're doing is, and it's so different. I mean, that's, so you have to be, you're always ready for what has been scripted. And then you're ready for it to change. And when it changes, when I get to set, the first thing I want to do, I find my AD and I look at the updated shot list and I find out what we're really doing for that day. And then from there, if I see something different, then I go and I make a nuisance of myself to that AD. And I'm like, okay, so here's what I need. I need to, like, let's say it's like, oh, now talent, a 5-year-old girl's walking the dog. I'm like, okay, I need that 5-year-old girl. I need to work with her 3 times for 5 minutes each, between now and her and that shot. So you just put out there what you need. And, the only thing is, it's like, if it's something really outlandish, then you can say, listen, we prepped something completely different. I'll try. I'll do my best and I'll try. And you say that, at least you're kind of reminding them that, you prepared this animal, and their brain. And this is, an animal actor. It's a different species speaking a different language, and they're doing so much for us already. And so you're letting them know, like, we're ready for what we agreed to, but we're going to try this. That way, if it's something isn't perfect, they at least have been reminded of that. And I find that little sentence to be very, very valuable. And I'd love to hear Sue's take on this too.
Yeah, Sue?
Definitely. I always do that. We didn't actually rehearse this or prep for this or train for this, but I definitely will give it a try because it's something that we're just, making up on the spot. But the other part of things changing on set is not so much in commercials, but on TV shows and sometimes on movies. If you're working on a TV show with a cast that you work with all the time, when they block the scene with second team, and second team is the stand-ins, so they have people that are the same kind of height and wearing the same color shirt as the cast, so they can light the scene and the cameras can line up and figure everything out, is you'll a lot of times rehearse your dog and go through the motions with your dog of where it's supposed to come in, where it's supposed to land, hit its mark, turn to the left, go pick up some keys, go into the kitchen, and you'll work your dog through their rehearsal with second team. And then when the cast comes in, the energy has changed. And so your dog is now like, whoa, because you've done this really boring, flat rehearsal with second team where everyone's just literally like a half asleep, just walking to their mark and standing there with absolutely no energy coming from them at all. And then the actors come on and, they've just left their trailer and they're walking together and they're telling a story about the weekend and they're laughing and joking and they burst onto the set and your dog is like, whoa. And suddenly you're just like having to rein your dog in and be like, all right, everyone just like take a breath, calm down. And that happens to me all the time on Hawaii Five-0. Everybody was super friendly and nice, and the whole cast and crew were always chatting and joking with each other. And I had a lab that loved everybody, and he thought that was his job, was to go around and engage when they were engaging with everyone. So it was really hard to just rein him in and have him focus. Super nice, well-trained dog. but the energy with him would like kind of set him off a little and he'd lose his focus.
Wow. So, I love that we opened up with a working dog, that you mentioned that it has to be a working dog or working animal. I do close the room at the top of the hour. We do have a few seconds left. I would love for each one of you just to give me like one of your favorite stories really quick. Casey?
Oh, I didn't have a story ready. I'll go last. Go
Okay.
ahead, Kirsten.
Kirsten, I know you have one.
I was actually going to offer, like, just give something to the audience in that, like, if you've got an animal that you want to get involved in the film industry, I definitely don't think, there's some of these agencies out there that can be a little predatory. Be very careful with thinking that you can pay one of these animal agencies to train your dog and that your dog is going to get work. Nobody gets rich off one dog. Okay. Yes, you might be a super great influencer, like have good marketing skills and have a social media dog. Those animals make way more than studio animals. Okay. It's a whole different thing. That dog becomes like a celebrity dog. But as far as like regular animal actors and being a regular animal trainer, nobody's going to get rich off one dog. So don't quit your day job for something like this, and be careful with those companies, because those companies, I'm not saying that they're all bad. I'm saying that you're not going to get what is being promised. They are over promising and they cannot deliver what they're being promised. But if you were interested in doing something like this, train your dog up, talk to somebody who's a studio trainer, and see if they can recommend somebody for you to work with. And then from there, you'll see if your dog is able to get work. People like Sue, I'm sure you've got people that reach out to you all the time. Just make sure that you don't succumb to these practices where you can pay somebody to get your dog booked. I'm sorry that wasn't a story, Michael, but I do think it's important to mention.
No, I love that because, I know that so well here in Hollywood as well, is the fact that, there was a study back in the 90s where there was 10,000 people a month moving into LA to be actors and 10,000 people a month leaving LA because they didn't make it as actors. And most of those people got baffled, or scammed by those type of companies all the time. I saw it here in LA all the time where they would put them through acting school. They do their pictures for them. They pretend to be their agent, and really they were just there to make the money on all the photos and all that. So I think that was great information. What about you, Sue?
Yeah, it's exactly what Kristen said. I don't have enough time to tell my stories. They're kind of long, but yeah, just to reiterate that. And also a lot of people think it's a way for them to get on set too. If they have a dog that's really well trained or cute or whatever, and they're thinking to themselves that, if I can get my dog signed up with an agency, and that may be true in markets that are a little, it's not Los Angeles. Like if you were in a market like Boston or Miami and you belong or sign up with an animal agency and it's a little print shoot, then yes, you may very well go to set with your dog. But for actual like real TV shows and movies, if your dog is going to get hired, you need to be ready to relinquish your dog to that animal company for them to train specifically for whatever they're working on. And unfortunately, most of the time you won't ever set foot on set.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think of that. Casey, what do you think?
Yeah, that she's right. And that sometimes that's the hard, like here in Australia, we'll occasionally, because I train a lot of pet dogs, I have a pretty good pool to draw from, like of dogs that I've already had my hands on, and I know enough about them to know if they would be suitable for something. And a lot of times the deal, I'll offer someone some money. Your dog will be in this TV show. It's going to be great. But a lot of times they have their hopes set on they're actually going to show up there every day and get to hang out on this set, where it's something totally the opposite of, no, I'm renting your dog and it's going to stay with me for the next month. And, it's going to have a great time for that month, but it's not really something where you can have, the dog's family hanging out on set. That's just not something that's really conducive.
Well, it probably maybe even distracting, maybe potentially as well. Yeah. Kirsten, I have to ask this before we close out. Casey made a comment about birds and electrical cords. Have you ever had a bird tack an electrical cord?
They don't like them. It freaks their brain out, and so it becomes a thing. So you avoid it. But also bears will go for electrical cords too. So it's not just birds, Michael. Don't get me started on bears.
A real quick story that relates to the cords and monkeys. I had a baboon on a set here maybe 5 months ago that Australia, as you know, has a lot of really dangerous snakes, and baboons are just genetically wired to be afraid of snakes. Like we can find snakes on the property here by listening to the baboons screaming. If they're screaming at the top of their lungs, it's because they can see a snake somewhere. And we had run this shot 1,000 times. Everything was great. And then somebody ran a cord across somewhere that the baboon could see. And in the middle of the shot that had been going perfect for the last hour, this baboon just has projectile diarrhea and jumps down off of the hood of the truck and wants to, cling on to me because it thinks the scary snake electric cord is coming to get it.
Oh my God.
I can't believe we're ending the room on a diarrhea story.
I know. I love that. Don't you love that? All right. Today's topic is diarrhea.
I do what I can.
I could talk about diarrhea all day. Don't get me started. Don't threaten me with a good time.
Oh my God, a good time, huh, Kirsten? Well, thank you guys for being here today, Casey, Kirsten, and Sue. Thank you for joining us, and everybody in the room. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. This is potentially going to be one of many rooms that we do here. Maybe we'll get Casey and Kirsten to come back and Sue to join us to just do a follow-up with this. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure there's so much more that we can unpack and more stories we can talk about. So thank you guys for being here. You guys are all great. So thank you very much for being here for Hollywood Animals. I'm Michael, and I am out. Thank you.